Hello friends, it's Miss Couch back again, your teaching artist from KidSmart. We're going to look at another series of pictures from the Raggedy Ann stories to see what we notice and read the story together and see what we think about Johnny Gruelle's Raggedy Ann and his story, Raggedy Ann Rescues Fido. So here we are with the very first picture and the title of the story. Of course we know who Raggedy Ann is. There she sits in the foreground or front of the picture. She is not in her regular clothes though. Something is different. Something is different. She is in a bed. I think I see sheets and a pillow. So what is she wearing? Her regular dress is blue with polka dots and flowers. But this is just a white dress, no apron. What could that be? And who is next to her? That must be another doll. Another doll that is also in a bed with her own pillow and her own sheets and her own little white clothes. What is going on in this picture? And what is all that green in the background? Raggedy Ann rescues Fido. Is that other doll named Fido? Tell me what you think. This is sort of a confusing way to start a story, Mr. Gruelle. Well, here is another picture, and it is so interesting. I see Raggedy Ann down in the bottom of the picture, but I see other dolls. And what on earth are they doing? I see Raggedy Ann with her white dress, and the skirt is blowing up, just like in the kite story. So I know she is falling down. Look at her hair. Her hair is flying in the wind. And other dolls are coming out the window. But did they fall out the window? These dolls in the window don't look like they are falling. What do you think is happening here? Next picture. Well, here we have all of these dolls. So many of them in little white dresses. And where are they? What? This is a little red house. Whose house is this? Have you ever seen a house that looks like this? I think I have seen a house like this. I think it was a dog house. What are these dolls doing going to visit a dog house? And what is happening here? The sky is blue, the grass is green. Raggedy Ann is still wearing this strange white dress. And now she is holding on to a dog's tail. Who is this dog? What is happening here? And whose house is that in the background? Whose fence is that? I don't know, but I think Raggedy Ann might be in some trouble in this story. Well, well, well. Here we have Raggedy Ann and the other dolls. And what are they doing now? Nobody's falling down in this picture. In this picture, there is a stool, sort of like the bottom of a chair. And Raggedy Ann looks like she's pushing, and another doll is helping her push. I don't know about this. Is this for real? Can dolls do things like this? Well, once again, Raggedy Ann is back in a bed in a white dress. There she is sitting up with her hand on her face, and there's other dolls in other beds with their heads on the pillow and their sheets pulled up. But something is different from the first picture to the last picture. The wall was green and now it's blue. What happened? And look at Raggedy Ann's bed. Her bed was brown and now it's white. What? What indeed? And I am seeing something else different. Look at Raggedy Ann's pillow in this picture. Raggedy Ann's pillow is so nice and so fluffy, and it looks like it has lace on the edge. How lovely. But look in this picture. What? No lace at the edge of her pillow. Instead, it looks torn. Looks like somebody ripped Raggedy Ann's pillow open. How strange. How strange indeed. Is there anything else you see different from the first picture to the last picture? Yeah, you are right. There are many differences here. In the first picture, there was no painting on the wall, and in this picture, there is a picture of a dog on the wall. And in the first picture, there was only Raggedy and one doll next to her. And in the last picture, there's Raggedy and 1, 2, 3 dolls next to her. The artist, Johnny Gruelle, who is also the author, has made some interesting differences. Guess we better read the story to find out what's really happening here. Alright, Raggedy Ann rescues Fido, and you can read along with me as we go. It was almost midnight, and the dolls were asleep in their beds, all except Raggedy Ann. Raggedy lay there, her shoe-button eyes staring straight up at the ceiling. Every once in a while, Raggedy Ann ran her rag hand up through her yarn hair. She was thinking. When she had thought for a long, long time, Raggedy Ann raised herself on her wobbly elbows and said, "I have thought it all out." At this, the other dolls shook each other and raised up, saying, "Listen, Raggedy has thought it all out." "Tell us what you have been thinking, dear Raggedy," said the tin soldier. "We hope they were pleasant thoughts." "Not very pleasant thoughts," said Raggedy, as she brushed a tear from her shoe-button eyes. "You haven't seen Fido all day, have you?" "Not since early this morning," the French dolly said. "It has troubled me," said Raggedy, "and if my head was not stuffed with lovely new white cotton, I'm sure it would have ached with the worry. When Mistress took me into the living room this afternoon, she was crying, and I heard her mamma say, 'We will find him. He is sure to come home soon.' And I knew they were talking of Fido. He must be lost." The tin soldier jumped out of bed and ran over to Fido's basket, his 10 feet clicking on the floor as he went. "He is not here," he said. "When I was sitting in the window about noontime," said the Indian doll, "I saw Fido and a yellow scraggly dog playing out on the lawn, and they ran out through a hole in the fence." "That was Priscilla's dog, Peterkins," said the French doll. "I know poor mistress is very sad on account of Fido," said the Dutch doll, because I was in the dining room at supper time, and I heard her tell Daddy to eat her supper, and he would go out and find Fido. But I had forgotten all about it until now." "That is the trouble with all of us, except Raggedy Ann," cried the little penny doll in a squeaky voice. "She has to think for all of us." "I think it would be a good plan for us to show our love for Mistress and try and find Fido," exclaimed Raggedy. "Oh, it is a good plan, Raggedy Ann," cried all the dolls. "Tell us how to start about it." "Well, first let us go out upon the lawn to see if we can track the dogs," said Raggedy. "I can track them easily," the Indian doll said, "for Indians are good at trailing things." "Then let us waste no more time in talking," said Raggedy Ann, and she jumped from bed, followed by the rest. The nursery window was open, so the dolls helped each other up on the sill and then jumped to the soft grass below. They fell in all sorts of queer attitudes, but of course the fall did not hurt them. At the hole in the fence, the Indian doll picked up the trail of the two dogs, and the dolls, stringing out behind, followed him until they came to Peterkins' house. Peterkins was surprised to see the strange little figures in white nighties come stringing up the path to the doghouse. Peterkins was too large to sleep in the nursery, so he had a nice cozy doghouse under the grape arbor. "Come in," Peterkins said when he saw and recognized the dolls. So all the dollies went into Peterkins' house and sat about, while Raggedy told him why they had come. "It has worried me too," said Peterkins, "but I had no way of telling your mistress where Fido was, for she cannot understand dog language. For you see," Peterkins continued, "Fido and I were having the grandest romp over in the park when a great big man with a funny thing on the end of a stick came running towards us. We barked at him, and Fido thought he was trying to play with us, and went up too close, and do you know, that wicked man caught Fido in the thing at the end of the stick and carried him to a wagon and dumped him in with a lot of other dogs." "The dog catcher!" cried Raggedy Ann. "Yes," said Peterkins, as he wiped his eyes with his paws, "it was the dog catcher. For I followed the wagon at a distance, and I saw him put all the dogs into a big wire pen so that none could get out." "Then you know the way there, Peterkins?" asked Raggedy Ann. "Yes, I can find it easily," Peterkins said. "Then show us the way," Raggedy cried, "because we have to try to rescue Fido." So Peterkins led the way up alleys and across streets, the dolls all pattering along behind him. It was a strange procession. Once a strange dog ran out of them, but Peterkins told him to mind his own business, and the strange dog returned to his own yard. At last they came to the dog catcher's place. Some of the dogs in the pen were barking at the moon, and others were whining and crying. Ah, there was Fido, all covered with mud, and his pretty red ribbon dragging on the ground. My, but he was glad to see the dolls and Peterkins. All the dogs came to the side of the pen and twisted their heads from side to side, gazing in wonder at the queer figures of the dolls. "We will try and let you out," said Raggedy Ann. At this, all the dogs barked joyfully. Then Raggedy Ann, the other dolls, and Peterkins went to the gate. The catch was too high for Raggedy Ann to reach, but Peterkins held Raggedy Ann in his mouth and stood up on his hind legs so she could raise the catch. When the catch was raised, the dogs were so anxious to get out, they pushed and jumped against the gate so hard it flew open, knocking Peterkins and Raggedy Ann into the mud. Such a yapping and barking was never heard in the neighborhood as when the dogs swarmed out of the enclosure, jumping over one another and scrambling about in the mad rush out the gate. Fido picked himself up from where he had been rolled by the large dogs and helped Raggedy Ann to her feet. He, Peterkins, and all the dolls ran after the pack of dogs, turning the corner just as the dog catcher came running out of the house in his nightgown to see what was causing the trouble. He stopped in astonishment when he saw the string of dolls in white nighties pattering down the alley, for he could not imagine what they were. Well, you may be sure the dolls thanked Peterkins for his kind assistance, and they and Fido ran on home, for a faint light was beginning to show in the east, where the sun was getting ready to come up. When they got to their own home, they found an old chair out in the yard, and after a great deal of work, they finally dragged it to the window and thus managed to get into the nursery again. Fido was very grateful to Raggedy Ann and the other dolls, and before he went to his basket, he gave them each a lick on the cheek. The dolls lost no time in scrambling into bed and pulling up the covers, for they were very sleepy. But just as they were dozing off, Raggedy Ann raised herself and said, "If my legs and arms were not stuffed with nice clean cotton, I feel sure they would ache. But being stuffed with nice clean white cotton, they do not ache, and I could not feel happier if my body were stuffed with sunshine, for I know how pleased and happy Mistress will be in the morning when she discovers Fido asleep in his own little basket, safe and sound at home." And as the dollies by this time were all asleep, Raggedy Ann pulled the sheet up to her chin and smiled so hard she ripped 2 stitches out of the back of her rag head. The end. Well, let's talk about these pictures a little bit, shall we? Why were there so many differences in some of these pictures? Here we see the background is green, and here it was blue. Well, the artist did that to show us it was different times of the night. First, this is when Marcella had put all the dolls to bed, and the sun maybe was still going down. But here at the end, the sun was about to come up. So the light was very different, and the artist wanted to show that. He made the wall, instead of its pretty green color, just a blue, that the dark sky turning light was beginning. It's not black in there anymore. The sun is starting to come up, so a little light is coming in, and eventually that wall will turn green. And the beds all look white because the moon is the only light in the sky, and things are gray. But some things, I think these dolls maybe got back in the wrong beds when they came home, because Raggedy Ann's pillow was not so nice. Maybe another doll is sleeping in that bed now. And this little doll had little points on her bed. But there's no little points like that in this picture. I don't even think that's the same doll. This doll with Raggedy Ann here, there's a soldier and an Indian and a red-headed doll. And in this picture, the doll has yellow hair. I think the dolls were so tired they crawled into the wrong beds. And what did we find out about the clothes they are wearing? All of them in their white nighties or nightgown, as the dog catcher was wearing a nightgown. Now that sounded a little bit strange to me. All the dolls have white nighties, and the dog catcher was in a nightgown too. I wonder what that is telling me about this story. I don't know any grown-ups that wear nightgowns, really. But I have read in other stories where they did. And those stories were set a long time ago. As a matter of fact, I am thinking about a chapter book that I read a long time ago called Little House on the Prairie. The grown-ups in those stories and the kids wore nightgowns. So I would be interested to do a little research and find out if Raggedy Ann and Little House on the Prairie were written at the same time. A time when even grown-ups wore nightgowns to bed. Now let's look at this picture where the dolls are all falling. Wait a minute, the story didn't say they fell out the window. The story said they jumped out the window. Let's look at it with this one. What are they doing here? Not jumping, climbing. Jumping down and climbing up. And see how they are helping each other? They help each other in both pictures. Definitely going down here, and then it's harder to get up, so they found a chair in the yard and drug it over. I imagine Fido found it very easy to jump into the window once this stool, or chair as the story said, was pulled up the window. I think he just climbed right in and went straight to bed. That leaves only two other pictures we haven't talked about. The doghouse, and here's all the dolls lined up, and the dog pulling them. This dog was not Fido. This dog was Peterkins. And the moon was the only light in the sky. Remember, it was nighttime, but even the moon could make a shadow. And the moon did make the light a little bit funny. He made the nightgowns look purple on the dollies. There they go. And look what is in the very bottom of this picture. Over in the right corner, there's a little bit of grass, but right next to it, two letters. J.G. That's the artist's signature, Johnny Gruelle. As a matter of fact, most of his pictures have his initials or his name, and sometimes you have to zoom in, but you might be able to see them in the bottom corner of each picture. They're all signed by the artist. Well, what did you think of this story, Raggedy Ann Saves Fido? It was quite an adventure with many surprises. Now, in the last story, Raggedy Ann was tied to a kite and went on an adventure and was caught in a tree with some birds, but she never spoke. That story seemed very real to me. Marcella was so worried. She found her in the tree. Her dad knocked her out of the tree. Everything seemed very real to me. But in this story, the dolls came to life. In this story, the dolls jumped out of a window and climbed back in the window. In this story, the dolls could talk to the dog. Dolls could speak the dog language. What do you think? Is this story real or not? Fiction or nonfiction? I think it is a little bit like a fairy tale, but I still like the story, and I hope you did too. Do you know any other stories where the dolls can talk and walk and have adventures? Do you know any other fairy tales where the animals can talk? Maybe they talk to other people, like dolls or fairies, or maybe the dogs talk to birds and cats talk to frogs. Oh, that reminds me of a very good story. The Princess and the Frog. I like that fairy tale. I hope you enjoyed this story with Raggedy Ann. I hope you enjoyed its happy ending with Fido at home in his bed, just like Fido is on the picture on the wall here in the nursery. I wonder who made that picture of Fido. Maybe Marcella drew it herself. Now the last thing I want to show you is a link to a YouTube video that will have a museum in the town where Johnny Gruelle came from. This is the only museum dedicated to... There you go. The link is down below, and you can learn about Johnny Gruelle's hometown of Arcola, Illinois, and his daughter, who inspired him to make the Raggedy Ann stories. I hope you enjoyed Raggedy Ann stories, and I will see you again soon.